3, 2, 1. Welcome back this Tuesday to Lit Happens, yo. This is Emily.
I'm Caitlin.
I'm Kayla.
I'm Abby.
Today we're discussing race and identity within the book The Girl Who Fell from the Sky by Heidi Duro.
Well, to give everybody some backstory, basically the book is about a girl named Rachel that went through a tragic loss of her entire family, and she had to move to Portland with her grandma. She's going through a life crisis after witnessing it all and dealing with the difficulties of being Black and Danish.
Before we continue discussing some sensitive topics, we are sponsored by BetterHelp, an online therapy organization for people who struggle with their mental health.
Okay, to further introduce the characters, we start off with Rachel. She's the main character. This story is basically about her. She's biracial. Her mom is Nella. She struggles with loneliness and the challenges of raising biracial children in the U.S. since she is originally from Denmark.
So more about Rachel. So her mom is Nella and she has 3 kids. Nella had a pretty hard home life and just yeah, so they lived in an apartment complex, something like that, and basically Nella decided that this world was too rough for them and she just wanted to protect her kids, again because of the biracial stuff. So she decided that she would just kill them all so that they could be in heaven and live their happy lives in heaven. So Nella ends up going to the rooftop of their apartment complex, but obviously in her head she's like, oh, they're all gonna die. Wrong. Rachel doesn't die.
Rachel jumps last, by the way, because her mom, she noted in the story that as though she looked right through her. So then first the mom pushed her 2 little brothers off, and then Nella jumped with one of her babies in her arms, and then finally it was just Rachel by herself, so she decided to jump with them. She just decided to go because that was what her family was doing. Yeah.
Okay, so from this, she had to move to Portland, but she struggled with the lifestyle change with her grandma and Aunt Loretta due to having a more lavish lifestyle, I would say. There was certain things that she would never do, so that was a lot for her to get used to, and especially being part Danish and having bright blue eyes, that kind of gave her an identity crisis.
Just to add some context, Aunt Loretta is her dad's sister, and then the grandma she moves in with is her dad's mom. Her grandma kind of turns into a mother figure for her because that's where she stays and lives. Aunt Loretta, she's her role model.
Kind of going more into that, we learned a lot about the identity of power, and grandma kind of gives that figure of she's super powerful and has a lot to do with Rachel's new life, because again, these people that Rachel is related to, she's still never met because her mother didn't, Nella didn't want her to meet these people. So going more into that power identity, grandma decides that Rachel needs to be this new person, completely change her identity, because now she's a bunch of eyes on her because she's the girl who fell from the sky and lived.
Okay, so the premise of this book is pretty much that every chapter is switching off a character, different perspectives of the whole story. So it starts off with Rachel, her grandma, and Aunt Loretta, but soon after that we learn about Brick.
Brick had a different name, but then he switched it up a little bit.
Yes, his original name is John, but he never liked his father, and his father is absent. So then he changed his name to Brick. Well, he changed it a few times. It was John, then James, and then he witnessed Jamie. James and James.
Jamie.
There was a lot.
Basically, he sees the family kill themselves. Sorry, trigger warning. But that's what this book is about. Even though he's a witness, and he's like, I need to change my names and move so many different places. He ends up being homeless, and
That's more in the story.
crap went down in that situation. We'll get into that.
Okay, Brick is a kid in Chicago. They all live in the same apartment complex. Brick has always been by himself his whole life. It's just him and his mom. Lone wolf. He's very independent, very much by himself. So basically, long story short, he witnesses all the families falling from the sky. He becomes very obsessed, I guess, with kind of understanding the whole story. And later in the story, we find out that he goes to a hospital and waits for Rachel to wake up. He's just there all the time because he feels connected to her almost. And there is when we also get introduced to Roger, which is Rachel's biological father, who's in the military. Even more backstory. Roger and Nella, Rachel's mom, they met in Denmark. Roger is an alcoholic, so there has been like issues with that, so he hasn't been very present. He's also an absent father in the sense.
Nella wanting to protect her children, not wanting them to know her father. With this book, it's kind of confusing. We learn more backstory as the story goes on, so try to stay locked in on that. It recycles a lot.
To start off a new topic, we can talk about Aunt Loretta more. Aunt Loretta, she became very close to Rachel and Grandma over the time. We had to go through like a part in the book where Aunt Loretta had passed away, and that was very hard on Grandma, especially since she relied on her so much. So going off of that, when she passed away, it took a huge toll on the entire family, and Grandma was trying to grieve, but also try to take care of Rachel, but the norms that Grandma instilled in Rachel after living there slowly started to fade, and she wasn't caring that much about her identity and like her like reputation and stuff. So from there, Grandma also starts getting into like alcohol and goes into this depression of not having anyone like that to rely on anymore, and only having Rachel purely as family now.
Alcoholic, right? Grandma. Nella, the mom, did not want the dad in the life because of alcoholism, and now Rachel is saying like, oh shoot, this is what mom was talking about. And she kind of goes into like, there's parts in the book where Nella speaks, and it's more of like a diary situation. People tell Rachel what her mom says all the time. Like, Grandma always is like very negative about Nella. She does not like her own daughter, basically, because
She makes it very apparent that they don't like each other.
Yeah, lots of family drama. Rachel kind of starts to side with like her mother at this point. She's like, I need to go off on my own, and like, I don't agree with this family lifestyle.
So basically, going off of that, since Grandma was being consumed by alcohol at this point, Rachel got away with like a bunch of things, and so she met this kid named Anthony Miller and had a secret relationship.
With them being a secret, I feel like Rachel's gonna keep it a secret because Grandma's grieving, so she doesn't want to hurt Grandma even more. But yet again, it being a secret from Grandma is probably gonna hurt her even more. Really, paying attention to Rachel because she's grieving is probably not gonna like affect her as much, but also gonna affect their relationship.
Going off that with Grandma like not really paying attention to Rachel, she really goes off on her own, and she experiences with a lot of like drugs and alcohol herself and different types of people. So I think Anthony Miller is like one of those people who kind of like shows her like the ways of like where she's living at, which is also not the safest place, not the best place to grow up, you know, kind of poverty situation. Moving on. Hi.
Hi, Kelly.
How are you? Thank you. She's petite.
Okay, kind of going back to the alcoholism thing. Nella and Rachel and their family were living in Chicago. Nella had left her husband Roger to date this new man named Doug, and he had said that he was sober, but Nella soon learns that he is not sober. His alcohol problems really increasingly get worse to the point where it gets abusive sometimes. That's when she kind of spiraled a little bit, and she ultimately led to them jumping off a roof.
About that. So like this spiraling problem, it's genetic. The whole family has it. And so starting with Nella, like again, like she spirals when she realizes I'm in the wrong relationship, and then obviously she was spiraling when she killed her whole family. We have an interview going on up behind us. Cute. Anyway, it's like bottling up her feelings. She calls it her blue bottle, and it's like all her sad, mad, angry feelings. She bottles it up because again she has to put on this persona of I'm perfect with my perfect family, when the community around her kind of know like this is not a perfect family. These people are kind of crazy, and so she's trying to like, if anything, she's trying to save now this family's persona and be like I'm the perfect one. Like I'm great.
Okay. So we know that Grandma kind of has a negative outlook on life, like Emily said earlier. And as we see that in the beginning of the book, she refers to her husband as a lizard, but also used it to describe just men in general.
Every man is a lizard.
So in her mind, she thinks how women are superior, women this, that, and especially being a marginalized minority group, especially with her race, was very hard. So she has this outlook on life. My question is, how do you think Grandma like sees men as like lizards?
I feel like her calling men lizards is kind of like showing that men are like low-key like insignificant, because grandma definitely thinks that there's a superiority with women. I feel like lizards are just like worthless, I guess. Like, I don't know, I feel like if you see a lizard, like, you're not really gonna like put much value to it. Yeah, it's kind of just there. It's like you don't really need them, but like, you know, if they're there, they're there.
With that, she also says like every man is a lizard, but when you find like Aunt Lorette's husband is like crazy rich, he's not a lizard. Grandma loves him.
It's like almost like if you're not rich in the world, you're a lizard.
Yeah. Or her
ex-husband.
Okay.
My bad, misspoke. Ex-husband.
Oh, character added. Add the character.
Okay. Before she speaks, I would like to add, Aunt Loretta had a professional sports player. Long story short, he cheated on her. They got divorced.
Oh, dear.
She later moves in with grandma. They live together, and then she meets a character named Drew. He is a drug and alcohol counselor. He works at like a homeless shelter, kind of. He just helps people.
Basically, I was just going to touch on the part where how we related back to how Aunt Loretta's like ex-husband, how grandma didn't see him as a lizard because he was such at a high spot in society. I think that's kind of why grandma wants to keep this image of living high and lavish, because he idolizes the way that she lives and her reputation to keep up, because she knows if she doesn't have the wealth that comes with being respected, she will try her best to be respected in any way she can. So my question is, what can we infer about like Rachel's life before her family did have that tragic accident? I guess her like social class, since it is very challenging for her in Portland with her grandma.
Abby?
Get in it.
Kind of complicated with, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before her whole family killed themselves, died, let's use that term. Before her whole family passed away, she was living this like, she knew she was judged, basically, the whole family. Everyone knew. So like they, you know, like in articles we've read, like, don't make a scene, don't do anything, don't say anything, don't run. Like, they never did anything. Them running was them passing away. Rachel lived, and she's now in this like high class family. She kind of feels like she's living like a lie. Like, she feels like, I think at one point she said she feels like a character in this like family. So yeah, I think she definitely feels like some imposter syndrome. Like, she's definitely, you go, Abby.
Sorry. That just reminded me of something. At the very beginning of the book, and low-key throughout the book, Rachel kept referring to herself as the new girl, and she was like, the new girl doesn't do this, the new girl doesn't do that. So it's kind of just like this new life that she's living. She has to fit in so she doesn't stand out because of what happened to her before. It's like not common for your whole family to jump off a roof together.
Like, she can't look weirder than she already is.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
We forgot to touch on a very big part, I think, earlier when we were talking about Anthony Miller and Rachel, of grandma walking in on them during a moment that
It
wasn't,
was very intimate between the two.
but not
But
fully
not for-
consensual.
yeah.
That's
And-
a good way to put it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So basically from here, this is when grandma was going through her alcoholism and going through grieving. So Rachel, not that she took advantage of it,
She didn't
and
have she didn't have like eyes on her, so she knew.
Yeah,
she was
so
kind
she-
of, like, free. In
she
a
went
sense.
to like this type of like rebellious like stage. Ever since she was there, she was under like kind of like
A microscope.
a microscope, yeah. And she took advantage of this, and it didn't really work out in her favor. Eric also went through the same thing, since Emily mentioned earlier that he
Yes.
was homeless. There was
also
this-
non-consensual things
non-consensual things happening, but it
there
was
is that.
far more severe.
So he like turns up homeless, and he's like on like a street alleyway. He sees like, and he's like on this alley with like a bar next to it, and then he comes across this like couple. Context: he has like a harmonica that he's obsessed with. He's really good at playing with it.
Roger gave him that in the hospital.
Oh,
It's like
you're
one
right.
of his like emotional support.
Yeah, so this is like his like object, like your childhood stuffed animal. Like, this is his thing, and like he always has it with him, so he always like he knows how to play it really good. Whatever. So he's like homeless, and like there's this couple that comes up to him, and he's like, they're like, oh, look at this like little kid playing a harmonica. And then they realize like, oh, we should use him to get money. People are gonna feel so sorry for us, because again, these people are not living well. Like, they are using substances and like
They're
a
living in a
very ruckety apartment.
a
Like,
lower. They're just more of a working class, but they
Yeah.
decide to spend their
Time
earnings
and
with
earnings.
substances that they shouldn't be having.
Yeah,
that
like they
aren't
take a step forward, 3
encouraged.
steps back, like that kind of situation.
Okay, song.
Sorry, Olivia Rodrigo. Anyway,
Obviously, we've talked about like alcohol abuse, but this also goes into drug abuse and then sexual abuse. Just like lots of abuse. At this point, Brick has run away from home, so he's on his own completely, and he feels like he has no one else, so he kind of just these people that he met. Yeah, he went along with it. They took him under their wing. Like, he's still like kind of benefiting from it because he has like a place to stay. He deals with a lot of anxiety and like just not very good mental situations. So the people that took him under their wing, they notice this and they help him deal with that with drugs. So that's when he becomes hooked on drugs also. Later he gets out of that. He doesn't stay with them anymore, but then he goes into a state where he's just jumping around from people to people, staying with them, helping them, but it's not very stable. He's couch surfing.
when he becomes like, he's like kind of younger. He's like 11 when he first gets taken in, I think. And then he starts to get older, so like people don't want him anymore. Like this child isn't a child anymore. Like, you know,
creepy.
it's creepy.
He's also like a 6'4" like big black dude. So it's like he's big for his size. People stop taking him in once they're like, this is weird, like creepy. He tries to go to like a homeless shelter, but he's scared they won't take him because he's 17 at this point, or 16 or something like that.
He's a teenager.
He's a teenager. He's young. So he tells them that he's 25. And so he stays at this homeless shelter where eventually he soon gets a job. And that's where he works for Drew. And eventually later in the story is when he meets Rachel. That's where everything connects. He was in the hospital with her dad. Before he left, he told Brick to tell her what he told him. Because Roger would like tell him stories, and he was like, before I leave, you have to promise me to tell Rachel like that you know me, like about me, like just things like that.
With that, when Roger meets Rachel, it's like kind of at an end of like a chapter. I remember reading it, and it like kind of ended with like, I should have known I knew her when I first saw her. Throughout the day, he realized like, oh, this is like the girl that I saw. Yeah, that was like really significant when he meets her and he's just like, oh my gosh, I should have known who this person was. And like, but plot twist, he doesn't say anything about it. He doesn't.
Until the very end, he like briefly mentions it. He never explains.
Yeah, the ending of this book is
He's just like, I
interesting.
know you.
Yeah.
I know you're.
Basically, as Emily was just saying and Abby was saying, Brick didn't approach Rachel after he said he would tell her everything. I just want to ask, like, why do we think he stopped, and like, just what was the purpose of him saying that he was going to tell her and then just stopping, other than it just being like nerves?
I think in fear that like he had already gone through like and created his new life, that if he dug up old like stuff, it was just gonna ruin everything again. He also like really looked out for Rachel. Like he really like cared about her.
Yeah.
He was very protective from afar. Yeah, like he always had an eye on her and like what she was doing and stuff. I think he also like knew like she's gone through grief. And so he knew like what had been going on in her life. So I think he didn't want to bring that up. But like I think a part of him was like, I know you and I know what happened.
To add on to that, it's very apparent that Brick has feelings for Rachel. He also has this protectiveness towards Rachel. So I feel like he felt like bringing it up to Rachel would just like hurt her, because then she'd have to think about, you know, her past.
I also think with that, like with Roger having feelings, Brick. With Brick having feelings for Rachel, I think on the basis he saw that she'd become this new person that like does drugs and drinks every day, knew about her boyfriend and like all that kind of stuff, like, or like that guy that she was dating for a little bit. Anthony. See, I don't. Anyway.
Hello.
Cut that out. Oh my god. I read the book. I swear.
It's a ruckus. Basically, Rachel and Brick were supposed to like run away, like together, but Brick left without Rachel to find his mother.
And
That's
Rachel,
what it was.
like,
Rachel was getting ready to dip. Rachel stole we'll just say a lot of money from her grandma in order to do this, but Brick already went to go find his mom. So that's kind of how the book ended.
Oh, evals of the book.
Evaluation number 1. I did not like it. Just kidding. It was not my cup of tea, but
Rated 1 through 10.
It was enticing. It was a solid 7.5 for me.
Okay.
I'll give it that. Confusing with the people, confusing with the perspectives, confusing with like the going back in history. Literally every chapter was something new. It's okay though. Fun.
Okay. I'll give it around like 7.58 just because I think it could have been better if the perspectives were a little bit longer than a couple pages because
It could have been clearer.
sometimes I didn't really look at all the names.
Reading a chapter, sometimes I would think it's about Rachel, and then it
Yeah.
would say Rachel's name, and I'd be
Yeah.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah, so
I need
it's
to go
just
back.
I just thought it could be like a little bit longer because it was literally like 4 pages per. I just think with the book there was a lot of different types of abuse, which can show like reality for some communities. The only point that I didn't really like about the book was the perspectives, but also how there was, like Emily said a couple days ago, there's no climax of the book.
couple days ago.
Yeah, she said a couple days ago.
Yeah, it's just like monotone.
It's just kind of you go, and it's a circle. It goes back.
You think you're getting somewhere. Like this book is like you think you're getting somewhere. Brick says, there was a man, and then there wasn't a man. Like it's so confusing, and you think you're getting somewhere, and then you go back to like she's living with grandma again. Like
certain parts.
yeah,
History. The other parts are like a crime. The other parts are just like help me.
half of it is like opinion versus like reality. There's some weird things in here.
There's some funky.
It's confusing.
The book was very confusing for me. I would give it a 7 out of 5, 7 out of 10, only because I could not keep track of who I was reading about. The stories were intertwining towards the middle of it, and then at the end, I was like, okay. I don't
connect and then they disconnect.
Yeah, I'm like, and it's too much backstory, too much backtracking. My brain can't do that.
I feel like each character could have had their own book,
Yes.
and it could have been like a series. Like you know, one of those collectibles.
Heidi Duro make a series about this book. Wait, what's her name?
Duro.
Duro. Heidi Duro. Do better. Just take that out.
God. For our last eval.
Last evaluation.
Before we evaluate, I would just like to plug our National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline to be able to call. It's 988.
That's it. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, like a 911.
It's like 911, but 988. So if you ever feel you need to call, that's the number. Just 3 numbers. Anyways, back to the eval. I would honestly give this book like a 9.
Oh.
Just because they noted that the book is very quick to like change characters. I thought that it kept me more entertained and like more interacted with the book, I guess, because it kind of just like it changes. Personally, I folded every corner of when a character changed just because it helped me like note when it changed and who we're talking about. Lots of folds. If you saw my book, I feel like it really helped kind of add perspective. However, I didn't really like the ending just because it didn't really give.
It didn't end the book at all.
It didn't really end it. It kind of just like. Yeah, it ended with a question, which honestly I kind of respect.
There's so many holes in the story that could have been filled with just more.
There's a second book.
Oh, there's a second.
There's a second book.
So maybe we'll be back.
Maybe see you next Tuesday. We'll be back. Before we end it, I would just like to say I feel like the ending was good though, in the sense that they could add a second book and have more to the story.
But give more context.
Give more context
I
and
would kind of
push
hope
it
the
more.
second book would be more about Rachel and Brick.
Yeah.
You know, like about their story.
Okay, guys, this was our pod of the girl who fell from the sky by Heidi W. Duro.
So we'll be back on Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we will. See you next Tuesday.
Hip hip.
Hooray!
Bye.